Preface to Intelligence Tests in School Reorganization by Lewis M. Terman, Virgil E. Dixon, A. H. Sutherland, Raymond H. Frazen, C. R. Tupper, and Grace Fernald. Prepared as a subcommittee report to the Commission on Revision of Elementary Education, National Education Association, Dr. Margaret S. McNaught, Chairman. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Leon Harvey. Preface. This book is in no sense an inventory of the important experiments now going on in the United States in connection with the use of intelligence and educational tests. Such an inventory would have required entirely too much space and would have involved an amount of repetition which could not have been other than tedious. Instead, experiments have been selected which are typical of the leading methods of readjustment now being attempted in different parts of the country. All of them illustrate important types of procedure, but involve varying degrees of generality. At one extreme is the Oakland plan described by Dr. Dixon, which affects the entire school enrollment and the entire administrative system. At the other is the work of Dr. Fernald, which concerns itself primarily with individual cases of maladjustment and has to do with pedagogical method rather than school reorganization. Between these extremes is the Los Angeles work described by Dr. Sutherland. The latter, although originally intended to meet the needs of individual misfits, has resulted in the working out of methods of individual instruction which appear to have applicability with children in general. The chapter by Dr. Franzen illustrates in a most interesting way how the results of intelligence and educational tests can be combined so as to serve as a better basis for rating the performance of pupils and the efficiency of schools. The chapter by Superintendent Tupper shows how much can be done, even in a small city and without elaborate reorganization, to improve the classification of children. Progressive educators are no longer interested in arguments regarding the validity of the test method. Another test, what next, is now the question that is causing deepest concern. It is hoped that the experiments herein described will have suggestive value, at least for all who are seeking a practical solution of the problems of individual differences. Lewis M. Terman, Chairman of Subcommittee on the Use of Intelligence Tests in Revision of Elementary Education. Introduction. As Chairman of the NEA Commission on Revision of Elementary Education, I asked Professor Terman in 1919 to accept responsibility for the preparation of a subcommittee report on the value of intelligence tests in school reorganization. It was Professor Terman's understanding that several $100 would be available from the treasury of the National Education Association for the purpose of defraying the expenses of a somewhat detailed investigation of school grading by mental tests. As the expected funds were not made available at a sufficiently early date, certain changes were necessary in the plan of the subcommittee. Instead of an investigation of the entire question, de novo, it was decided to offer brief summaries and interpretations of typical experiments already underway in a number of school systems of the country, which have for their purpose the adjustment of school methods, curricula, and organization to the individual differences of pupils as shown by mental tests. The result is this little book, which is offered to the educational public in the belief that it will prove of interest and help to the increasing thousands of teachers and school administrators who use mental and educational tests but are often at a loss to know what adjustments to make in the light of their test results. Margaret S. McNaught, Chairman of Commission on Revision of Elementary Education, National Education Association. Commission on Revision of Elementary Education, National Education Association. Margaret S. McNaught, Chairman, State Commissioner of Elementary Schools, Sacramento, California. Elizabeth Ash Woodward, Secretary, University of State of New York, Albany, New York. Georgia Alexander, Indianapolis, Indiana. Ruby A. Batt, Memphis, Tennessee. Abby Louise Day, New York City. Sarah H. Fahey, Brooklyn, New York. Anna Laura Forrest, Denver, Colorado. Theda Guildmeister, State Normal School, Winona, Minnesota. Francis H. Harden, Chicago, Illinois. Clark W. Hetherington, New York City. Olive M. Jones, New York City. Amy E. Lane, Chicago, Illinois. Mariana March, Child Culture School, Memphis, Tennessee. Carol Gardner Pierce, State Normal School, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Payson Smith, State Commission of Education, Boston, Massachusetts. Leda Lee Toll, State Normal School, Towson, Maryland. Lewis M. Terman, Leland Stanford Junior University, Stanford University, California. End of Introduction and Preface to Intelligence Tests and School Reorganization. Chapter 1 of Intelligence Tests and School Reorganization. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Leon Harvey. Intelligence Tests and School Reorganization, Chapter 1. The Problem. Lewis M. Terman, Stanford University. Historical. There are few, if any, more significant events in modern educational history than the developments which have recently taken place in the methods of mental measurement. The importance of this new psychological tool for the improvement of school administration has been recognized everywhere with a promptness which is hardly less than amazing. Only 16 years have elapsed since Binet devised his first crude series of intelligence tests. Only 13 since he gave to the world the first real intelligence scale, and only 11 since the first translation of Binet's methods was published in America. During the last decade, translations and revisions of the Binet scale have been published in practically every civilized country in the world. In this movement, America has led. Nowhere else has such extensive practical use been made of the tests, or so much research been undertaken for their improvement. In prisons, juvenile courts, reform schools, and institutions for defectives, their use has become well nigh universal. But the movement has not stopped at this point. Far-seeing educational psychologists and school administrators early realized that the greatest value of mental tests would be found in their application with school children. This use has grown to include the testing not only of backward or otherwise abnormal children, but also of the gifted and normal. Thousands of teachers have been trained in the use of the Stanford Binet or group test procedure, and in many school systems all the children have been tested. There is reason to believe that at the present time Binet tests are being given in the United States at the rate of 250,000 a year. The value of intelligence tests was soon so thoroughly demonstrated that the need for a more expeditious method than that of Binet became imperative. Accordingly, methods of group testing were developed which, under the stimulus afforded by Army needs in the Great War, were brought to a stage of practical usefulness with unexampled swiftness. Then hardly had the war closed when a revision of the Army tests, for the purpose of adapting them to school uses, was made possible by a grant of $25,000 from the General Education Board of the Rockefeller Foundation. The work was promptly carried through by a committee of psychologists under the auspices of the National Research Council, and the National Intelligence Tests, designed for grades 3 to 8, were the result. Meanwhile, numerous psychologists, on their own initiative, were devising and trying out other methods of group testing. By 1921, more than a dozen group tests for the measurement of mental ability had been published. Several of these were designed for use in the primary grades, others for use in the grammar grades, high school or college. Most of the methods had been modeled after the Army alpha or beta scales, but some of them contained ingenious improvements. In general, progress has been in the direction of simplification of procedure in giving and scoring the tests. The aim had been to devise methods which could be safely used by any conscientious and intelligent principal or teacher. This end seems now to have been fairly well attained. Probably 1 million children in the schools of the United States were given a group mental test during the year 1919-1920. In 1920-1921, the number was probably not less than 2 millions. We may expect the number to exceed 5 million within a few years. To interpret this movement as but another educational fad, destined to flourish a while and then be forgotten, would be a serious mistake. The essential facts in the situation do not justify such a view. Intelligence tests have demonstrated the great extent and frequency of individual differences in the mental ability of unselected school children, and common sense tells us how necessary it is to take such differences into account in the framing of curricula and methods, in the classification of children for instruction, and in their educational and vocational guidance. Standardized tests of the school's raw material can no more be dispensed with than standardized tests in agriculture, manufacturing, or medicine. In time, however, we may expect that the limits of their usefulness will be better defined. Some false hopes will have to be dispelled. The over-enthusiastic will gradually learn that not even the universal use of intelligence tests will bring us to an educational millennium. The child is more than intelligence, and education is more than the cultivation of intellectual faculties. Thus far effort has been devoted chiefly to the improvement of testing technique and to the investigation of the nature and range of individual differences. The results have shown convincingly that the schools of the future will have to take account of such differences, but they have not shown how this can best be done. School reform has lagged behind the advances of psychological science. This is, of course, inevitable. The problems involved are inherently very difficult and are of such a nature that various alternative methods of solution appear to be, from the point of view of theoretical considerations, almost equally plausible. Considerable time will have to elapse before final judgment can be rendered as to the relative value of the various possible methods of adjusting curriculum and methods to the individual differences of children. The purpose of this monograph, which has been prepared as a subcommittee report of the NEA, Commission on Revision of Elementary Education, is to set forth typical mental test results which will show the necessity of the schools taking account of native intellectual differences, and to describe a few experiments which will illustrate practical administrative methods of meeting the situation. These experiments are frankly tentative. They are often merely for their suggestive value, and with no thought that they should be taken as representing ideal schemes of school reorganization. Lack of uniformity in the mental ability of grades and classes. School administrative practice in the United States has set up grade standards of achievement which, notwithstanding a certain amount of variability intentionally allowed for, are supposed to represent a fair degree of uniformity throughout the country, or at least throughout the schools of a given city, state, or county. However, standardized achievement tests have shown that such uniformity does not exist. It is not uncommon to find the 4th grade in one city accomplishing as much as the 5th grade in another, or no more than the 3rd grade may accomplish somewhere else. In fact, such discrepancies are not at all rare within the same school system, where all the usual precautions have been taken to secure uniformity. When conditions of this kind are uncovered, they are commonly attributed to differences in the efficiency of teachers or to differences in the home environment of the pupils. Intelligence tests have shown that these explanations are usually erroneous, and that the condition is rarely due to differences in the raw material with which different schools have to work. A few illustrations will suffice. 5 first-grade classes in the vicinity of Stanford University, tested by Dixon about the middle of the school year, yielded the following median mental ages, stated in years and months: 5, 7, 6, 0, 6, 0, 7, 2, 7, 8. That is, the best class had a median mental age more than 2 years above that of the poorest class. The best class possessed average second-grade ability, the poorest class about average kindergarten ability. 7 receiving first grade classes tested by Dixon in Oakland, California, gave the median mental ages 5'8", 6'2", 6'4", 6'4", 6'6", 6'6", and 7'0". The median mental age found by Dixon for 56 kindergarten children in Oakland was 5'10", and that for 112 kindergarten children tested by Miss Cuneo was 5'6". It is evident, therefore, that some first-grade classes are less fitted to do standard first-grade work than some kindergarten classes. 3 first-grade classes in the Horace Mann School gave median mental ages 7'4", 7'5", and 7'11". Here the differences within the same school are small, but the first grade of this school as a whole is enormously superior to the first grade as a whole in Oakland or in most other school systems. In Alameda, California, Hubbard tested 2 5th grade classes, one of which yielded a median mental age of almost 12 years, and the other a median mental age of slightly more than 10 years. The former had 6th grade ability, the latter 4th grade ability. Tests of 29 Oakland classes graduating from the 8th grade yielded class medians ranging from less than average 6th grade ability to average 10th grade ability. Similar contrasts appeared over and over in the data secured from cities throughout the country in the establishment of norms on the Otis National and Terman group tests. Until grade ability becomes more nearly uniform, it will be unreasonable to expect anything like uniformity in grade achievement. In view of such facts as those just reviewed, it is obvious that the usual custom of standardizing educational tests in terms of grade performance has little to commend it. Grade means too little, or rather it means too many things to justify such a procedure. The grade concept lacks permanency. It is affected by all the shifting influences incident to such unstabilized and unstandardized educational systems as we find at present in this country. Age offers a far more satisfactory and permanent basis for norms of school achievement. It is beginning to be recognized that educational tests will have to be re-standardized in terms of age means or medians. Heterogeneity within a given grade or class. Lack of uniformity in the median ability of grades and classes would not, if recognized and allowed for, be especially serious. There is nothing in the situation which requires that a given grade should always mean the same thing, either in different school systems or in different schools of the same system. It is only serious when not recognized, and when the variability in achievement is attributed to spurious causes. On the other hand, a wide range of ability in the same class is much more serious. In general, children are able to profit from particular instruction roughly in proportion to the degree of mental maturity they have attained. The chronologically old and the chronologically young may and often do need the same kind of subject matter and methods. This is rarely true of the mentally old and the mentally young. A reasonable homogeneity in the mental ability of pupils who are instructed together is a sine qua non of school efficiency. The conditions which mental tests have disclosed in this respect are anything but satisfactory. The extreme ranges of mental ability in 3 first-grade classes of the Horace Mann School taken separately were in terms of mental age 2 years 9 months, 3 years 2 months, and 3 years 9 months. The extreme ranges found by Dixon in 7 first-grade receiving classes were 2 years 6 months, 2 years 8 months, 3 years 2 months, 3 years 2 months, 3 years 6 months, and 3 years 6 months. Those for Hubbard's 2 fifth-grade classes were 5 years 4 months and 6 years 3 months. In Palo Alto, the ranges found within 3 first-grade classes were 6 years 4 months, 3 years 2 months, and 2 years 4 months. Within 3 second-grade classes, 4 years 9 months, 4 years 11 months, and 2 years 10 months. Within 2 third-grade classes, 6 years 6 months, and 4 years 6 months. The range for Proctor's first-year high school pupils was practically 7 years. The ranges disclosed by the National Intelligence Tests in grades 3 to 8 of Vallejo, California, were in most cases over 4 years for any given grade. Summarizing, in a typical first-grade class, the dullest pupil is likely to have a mental age of 4 or 4.5 years, the brightest a mental age of 8 or 8.5. If we lump a dozen first-grade classes together, the range is ordinarily from 3 or 3.5 years to 10 or 10.5. Similarly, a dozen third-grade classes may range from mental age 7 to mental age 13. Fifth-grade classes from mental age 8 to mental age 16, and eighth-grade classes from mental age 10 to a point about as high as any intelligence scale will measure. The overlapping of adjacent grades in mental ability is illustrated in tables 1 and 2, which are selected as typical from an indefinite number of such tables available. The condition may be summed up by the statement that, in general, from 20 to 25% of the pupils of a given grade have attained a mental age about as high as the median mental age of the next higher grade, while the lowest 20 to 25% in the same grade are about as low in mental age as the median for the next grade below. Usually 5% or more at each extreme, or 10 to 15% in all, are 2 grades removed from that which is standard for their mental age. The amount of grade overlapping in mental ability is considerably greater in the upper school grades than in the lower, due partially to the fact that the influences responsible for overlapping have operated longer, and partially to the fact that as children get older, variability as expressed in units of mental age becomes greater. Table 1 is displayed on the page. Overlapping of Stanford Binet mental ages in the first 3 grades of Palo Alto, California. However, there are 2 mitigating circumstances which should be taken into account in the interpretation of data relative to grade overlapping in mental age. Table 2 is displayed on the page. Overlapping of National Intelligence Test scores, total scales A and B in grades 3 to 8, Vallejo, California schools. 1. A part of the observed overlapping is spurious because of the imperfect reliability of intelligence tests. The higher the reliability of the test, the less is the overlapping. Very brief or otherwise unreliable tests greatly exaggerate the overlapping. Kelly has given us a correction formula which allows for scale unreliability, viz. sigma t equals sigma 1 multiplied by the square root of r. Or, substituting descriptive terms for symbols, the true standard deviation, that which would be found if the test were practically a perfect measure of the ability or abilities it purports to measure, equals the observed standard deviation multiplied by the square root of the test's correlation with itself calculated from scores of the same group of individuals. By the use of this formula, the grade overlapping actually observed for any mental or educational test can be corrected to show what the true overlapping is for the abilities tested. Even when such correction is made, however, the overlapping of adjacent grades is still very great. When we are dealing with Stanford Binet mental ages, the application of Kelly's formula does not alter the results very materially. In the 3 Horace Mann first grade classes, the extreme mental age range given by the Stanford Binet was reduced in one class only from 2 years 9 months to 2 years 6 months, in another class by a slightly greater amount, and in the third class by about 25%. When the mental ages were based on a composite score of the Stanford Binet, Presley scale, Mayo tests, teachers' ratings on mental maturity, and teachers' rankings in ability to read, such overlapping, as it shows by the Stanford Binet Otis National or Terman Group tests, is, for the most part, genuine. 2. Granting this, however, it would still be a mistake to assume that no overlapping in real ability is justifiable. There is no warrant for grading all pupils rigidly on the basis of mental age, even if mental age is the most important single factor. A pupil's fitness for a given grade depends in some degree upon his previous instruction, his health, his physical maturity, his industry, and his attitude towards schoolwork. However, when all reasonable allowances have been made for these factors, it is impossible to find warrant for the present miscellaneous scattering of mental ages through the grades. Making every allowance that could be made, it is doubtful whether in an average school system more than 70% of the pupils are being given instruction which is as well suited to them as it would be the instruction in a higher or a lower grade. Intelligence tests necessary for the discovery of differences. The mere fact that such heterogeneity as that noted above exists is in itself evidence enough that intelligence tests are needed to bring them out. Thanks to the industrious work of a few psychologists, the value of intelligence tests as an aid in determining mental ability has been established beyond any possibility of doubt. Those whose work entitles them to an opinion no longer debate the question. Investigations have gone farther and have brought to light a number of the factors which contribute to the unreliability of estimates of general ability based on ordinary observation. Among these factors are age, industry, physical appearance, personality, and attitude towards schoolwork. For example, investigators are unanimous in finding that when pupils for a given grade are rated for brightness, the older pupils are overrated and the younger pupils underrated. This error is not one which can be eliminated by simply cautioning raters to take age into account. The teacher is not aware of the full significance of age in this connection and so cannot take it into account. The influence of industry is hard to eliminate for the reason that the natural basis for the teacher's judgment of a pupil's ability is the quality of his school performance, since a pupil of very superior intelligence may do mediocre work if he lacks sufficiently in application. It is inevitable that lazy pupils will be underrated. Similarly, the pupil of superior industry is likely to be somewhat overrated, although errors in this direction are not likely to be as large as errors of the opposite sort. Intelligent appearance, a lively expression, an agreeable attitude, and spontaneity in response all tend to bring about the overrating of ability, while a placid expression, homeliness, annoying behavior, diffidence, and apparent lack of self-confidence cause underrating. Annoying behavior and timidity are particularly likely to affect the teacher's judgment unfavorably. Objective tests offer the only available means of checking up the accuracy of subjective impressions. Mental age standards for grading. In any plan of school adjustment to individual differences, questions are sure to arise regarding mental age standards for the various grades. Tentative standards worked out on the basis of 1,936 Binet tests of California children are as follows. Table 3 is displayed on the page. Mental age standards for the different grades. 3 columns proceed across the page with grade, standard mental age, and mental age at mid-grade. Grade 1, standard mental age 6.6 to 7.5. Mental age at mid-grade 7 years. Grade 2, standard mental age 7.6 to 8.5. Mental age at mid-grade 8 years. Grade 3, standard mental age 8.6 to 9.5. Mental age at mid-grade 9 years. Grade 4, standard mental age 9.6 to 10.5. Mental age at mid-grade 10 years. Grade 5, standard mental age 10.6 to 11.5. Mental age at mid-grade 11 years. Table 6, standard mental age 11.6 to 12.5. Mental age at mid-grade 12 years. Table 7, standard mental age 12.6 to 13.5. Mental age mid-grade 13 years. Grade 8, standard mental age 13.6 to 14.5. Mental age at mid-grade 14 years. HSI, standard mental age 14.6 to 15.5. Mental age at mid-grade 15 years. The child is expected to start to school between the ages of 6 and 7 years, although many start later and some younger. The average age in most parts of the United States is not far from 6.5. The expected mental ages figured on this basis would be those given above. The actual mental age medians for the 1,936 cases by grades were as follows. Grade 1, cases tested 341, median mental age 610. Grade 2, cases tested 189, median mental age 711. Grade 3, cases tested 181, median mental age 90. Grade 4, cases tested 253, median mental age 911. Grade 5, cases tested 226, median mental age 110. Grade 6, cases tested 236, median mental age 12.1. Grade 7, cases tested 193, median mental age 13.1. Grade 8, cases tested 180, median mental age 14.2. HSI, cases tested 137, median mental age 15.4. It will be seen that the medians found agree fairly closely with the expected. Mental age medians reported for the various grades by other investigators are also in substantial agreement with the above standards. Typical findings are shown in Table 4. As has already been shown, a particular class of a given grade may yield a median mental age far above or far below the standard for that grade as given in Table 3. These standards simply indicate approximately where the medians ought to be, as our schools are graded at present. If our grading system should change, the grade standards also would change. The standards given afford a serviceable basis for estimating the quality of work which should be expected of a given class in a given grade, and for judging the fitness of a grade as a whole. in any particular school system to pursue the work which is normal to that grade. By use of the standards, it is also possible to translate grade performance in all kinds of educational tests into age standards. Thus, a pupil whose score in reading corresponds to grade 4 may be said to have a reading age of 10 years. A pupil whose score in spelling is halfway between the standard for grade 7 and that for grade 8 has a spelling age of 13.5 years, etc. Table 4 is displayed on the page. Median mental ages found in different grades. Solution by individualization of instruction. Solution of the problem of individual differences may be sought in either of two directions: 1. In the individualization of instruction, or 2. In the formation of more homogeneous classes for group instruction. It is well to note that, apart from compromises and mixed procedures, these two alternatives exhaust the possibilities. Until comparatively modern times, the method of individual instruction was almost the only one known. It was only natural that this method should prevail as long as education was for the selected few only. It was equally natural that, with the growth of democratic ideals and the movement towards universal education, the individual method should be replaced by group instruction. On no other basis at that time did universal education seem possible. More recently, however, and particularly in the last 30 years, several notable attempts have been made to modify school procedure in such a way as to individualize instruction without restricting the numbers to be educated. To describe these experiments in detail would carry us beyond our present purpose. They have not met with enough success to give the method any vogue. The difficulties are very great. As long as there must be 30 or 40 pupils for each teacher, it is obvious that individual instruction for all is not possible without radical modification both of textbooks and of methods. And the necessary modifications can be evolved only by patient trying out of specially devised procedures. The Los Angeles Adjustment Plan, for example, hinges largely upon individual instruction, but has been developed primarily for use with special class children. For a description of the adjustment plan, the reader is referred to Chapter 2. This and other current experiments in individual instruction will be watched with the greatest interest. Developments in the use of project methods and practice materials, and in the standardization of curriculum content according to mental maturity, have given an entirely new aspect to the situation. What formerly seemed impossible may conceivably prove to be not only possible but feasible. But even if possible and feasible, is a scheme of purely individual instruction also desirable? The writer does not believe that a dogmatic answer to this question is at present justifiable. The objection usually voiced is that under such a plan the school would lose most of its social values. The question which the objection raises is of crucial importance. Any considerable loss in social and character development would be too big a price to pay for a little improvement in the efficiency of intellectual training. On the other hand, it must be admitted that the supplementation of self or individual instruction by suitable playground experience and by frequent group discussions of general interest topics partially makes up for the lack of social experience afforded by group study and social recitation. It has often been pointed out that learning, after all, is necessarily an individual matter. A more serious obstacle to the general adoption of completely individualized instruction lies in the fact that it demands greater skill and resourcefulness on the part of the teacher. Solution by homogeneous class groups. Whether a satisfactory scheme of individual instruction is possible or not, a consideration of present educational trends points to the conclusion that solution of the problem of individual differences is more likely to be found in the gradation of pupils into homogeneous class groups. At any rate, effort is at present chiefly in this direction, for while experiments in individual instruction are few and localized, experiments in regrouping for mass instruction are numerous and widespread. The regrouping method has the great advantage that it involves a less radical break with current educational practice. Probably a majority of the cities of the country are attempting at least something in this line, the Oakland plan, described in Chapter 3, being perhaps the most thoroughgoing experiment of this kind that has yet been attempted. The multiple track plan, which is the most important feature of the Oakland scheme, is of course not new. For a quarter of a century, attention has frequently been called to the merits of the multiple track plans operated in Mannheim, Germany, Cambridge, Massachusetts, and elsewhere. Although the method has met with little adverse criticism and has been widely extolled as a means of reducing the number of repeaters, it has not been widely adopted. It has been given a new vitality and new promise chiefly as a result of advances in psychological methods for measuring individual differences. Intelligence tests have 1. Demonstrated more convincingly the extent of individual differences, and 2. Made it possible to classify children more accurately on the basis of native ability. Also, as a result of their findings, we have come to realize the necessity of a differentiated course of study for the pupils progressing along each of the so-called tracks. It is the conviction of the writer that, ideally, provision should be made for 5 groups of children: the very superior, the average, the inferior, and the very inferior. We may refer to these as classes for the gifted, bright, average, slow, and special pupils. For each of these groups, there should be a separate track and a specialized curriculum. The relative numbers enrolled in the 5 groups would of course vary from place to place. In the average school system of sufficient size, enrolling say 2,000 pupils in the grades below the high school, a division something like the following might be considered. A table is displayed on the page with 3 columns: group, number in each group, and remarks. Gifted, 2.5% or 50 pupils, 2 classes, 4 grades each. Bright, 15% or 300 pupils, 1 class in each grade. Average, 65% or 1,300 pupils, 4 to 5 classes in each grade. Slow, 15% or 300 pupils, 1 class in each grade. Special, 2.5% or 50 pupils, 3 ungraded classes. The above is merely a suggestion and is intended to apply only to the strictly average city. In a school population containing an exceptionally large proportion of gifted or very dull children, the numbers would have to vary accordingly. In general, the percentage who should be cared for in the various groups would probably range somewhat as follows: gifted, 1 to 3%; bright, 10 to 20%; average, 54 to 78%; slow, 10 to 20%; special, 1 to 3%. School systems of 500 to 1,000 enrollment will, of course, often have to be content with at most 3 instead of 5 tracks, and in some cases may have to get along with only 2. An adjustment involving at least 2 tracks would seem to be feasible even in a village school having only 4 or 5 teachers.
In this case, the teacher would have about half the pupils in each of 4 grades instead of all the pupils in 2 grades. In a typical one-room school enrolling 7 or 8 grades, the multiple track plan does not seem feasible as a formal system at all, although in individual cases some adjustments may be possible. For such schools, the main concern should be to promote pupils from grade to grade more strictly on the basis of ability as shown by standardized mental and educational tests. It cannot be too strongly emphasized that the multiple track plan calls for a differentiated course of study as regards both content and method. The working out of such courses is indeed one of the most urgent needs in education today. It is easy enough to say that courses for the bright and gifted should be enriched and that those for slow pupils should be reduced to minimum essentials. Exactly what kind of enrichment is desirable for the former and exactly what the minimum essentials are for the latter are questions which perhaps cannot be satisfactorily answered at present. However, a book dealing sagaciously with the problem would merit and would doubtless have wide popularity and profound influence.
For the gifted, bright, average, and dull groups, the specialized course should in each case be continuous to the end of the 8th grade at least, and for the first 3 groups, at least to the end of the high school.
For the slow group, the curriculum beyond the 8th grade should be almost entirely vocational. The special group will, of course, not ordinarily go beyond the 4th or 5th grade. Beyond suggesting that the curriculum for these pupils should be made far more vocational and practical than it usually is, the writer cannot enter at present into the problems of special class methods. For the bright, average, and slow groups, the reorganization should hinge primarily upon differentiated curriculum content and methods rather than upon time adjustments.
There is no reason why the three main tracks should not, in a large majority of cases, be covered in the same number of years.
Naturally, a few pupils could be expected to gain or lose a year. The gifted group, on the other hand, should cover the 8 grades in 6 years, or at most 7. For these, the number of grades below the high school could very well be reduced to correspond to the number of years adopted as normal for the group. The longer the course, the greater will be the importance of curriculum enrichment and method modification. For the pupils of all groups, progress on the multiple track plan would be continuous. There would still be occasional failures, but the number of repeaters would probably be reduced to a fifth or even a tenth of what it is now. Finally, it goes without saying that the road for transfers from track to track must always be kept open. A fixed and permanent grouping will not only be repugnant to American ideals of democracy, but also pedagogically unjustifiable. So many factors enter to determine a child's fitness for a given kind of schoolwork, and these factors operate from time to time in such variable combinations that frequent transfers would be imperative. Suggestions for the introduction of a mental test program. What pupils should be tested? The answer is all. If only selected children are tested, many of the cases most in need of adjustment will be overlooked. The purpose of the tests is to tell us what we do not already know, and it would be a mistake to test only those pupils who are recognized as obviously below or above average. Some of the biggest surprises are encountered in testing those who have been looked upon as close to average in ability. Universal testing is fully warranted, whether considered from the point of view of money cost or labor cost. If we can afford to spend $50 to $100 a year on a child's instruction for 10 to 12 years, then we can surely afford to spend 6 to 8 cents for a test whose results may affect the child's entire educational career. The labor cost is too small to be counted an obstacle. Now the satisfactory group tests are available. If the results are properly used, the cost is a negative quantity, for in the long run, labor is saved. Choice of tests. New intelligence tests have recently appeared in such numbers that the average teacher or school administrator is likely to experience a feeling of helplessness in trying to decide regarding the relative merits. However, the number of tests which are really anything like satisfactory from both the scientific and practical point of view is small. It is not within the scope of this report to recommend particular tests, but the following general statements may be made. 1. At present, 3 separate group scales are required in testing grades 1 to 12, one for grades 1 to 3, another from grade 3 or 4 to grade 8 or 9, and a third from grade 7 or 8 to grade 12. 2. Those who are not thoroughly familiar with the merits of the different tests available for each of these levels should seek the help of someone who knows. The Director of Educational Research in almost any city of considerable size is ordinarily in a position to give unprejudiced and expert advice. 3. Brief tests requiring 10 or 20 minutes, even when they show a fairly high correlation with more thorough intelligence scales, are too unreliable to be depended upon for the measurement of individual pupils. The saving in time and cost is too small to justify the risk of doing injustice in a considerable percentage of cases by the use of erroneous scores. 4. The group tests devised for grades below the 4th are much less satisfactory than tests for grades 4 to 12. When primary tests are used, they need to be checked up by a large amount of individual testing. This is especially important in the first grade. When possible, individual rather than group tests should be given throughout the first 3 grades. 5. Pupils of any grade who test extremely high or extremely low, and pupils whose test score disagrees materially with school performance should be given an individual test.
Who shall give and score the tests? Group tests may be given by the school psychologist or director of research, the principal, or the teachers themselves. Although the procedure for many of the tests is simple enough to be mastered readily by any teacher, it is on the whole more satisfactory to have all tests given by trained and experienced examiners. When no experienced examiner is available, the teacher should not hesitate to undertake the work herself. Binet testing is of course more difficult, and to do it as it ought to be done requires considerable training. However, countless teachers and principals have attained a fair mastery of the Binet method entirely by their own efforts. Many cities are solving this problem by giving training courses in Binet procedure to selected groups of teachers. The scoring of group tests may be done by the teachers provided it is carefully supervised. Scoring done without adequate supervision is certain to contain a large percentage of errors. Additions to secure a total score should always be performed twice, preferably by different persons. Copying and transcription of scores should also be verified. Who shall have access to the scores? Not the public, certainly, and ordinarily not the pupils. In rare cases, one may be warranted in letting a particular pupil know his score, but in the long run it is probably wiser never to do so. The child who is inquisitive may simply be told that he has done well or pretty well, etc. If this rule is ever broken, it should be in the case of pupils in the upper grades or high school who test high but lack self-confidence or do not apply themselves diligently. Nor should the scores ordinarily be given to parents. To keep them from the teachers would be, in the opinion of the writer, to carry secrecy too far. It is always necessary, however, to instruct teachers in the significance of scores and to caution them severely against the evils of making unguarded remarks about the intelligence of this or that child. It is extremely important that everyone who uses scores in mental ability tests should have some definite knowledge of and hold some respect for their probable errors. Special instruction on this point should be given. The use of supplementary data. The test score, instead of being considered infallible, should be taken as the point of departure for further study of the pupil. Educational tests should be used and data should be secured on health, interest, habits, and attitude towards schoolwork. Before the tests are given, ratings should be made of each pupil on quality of schoolwork, intelligence, industry, social adaptability, etc. These may be made on a 5-point or 7-point scale. The comparison of such ratings with test results will prove of surpassing interest. One pupil tests lower than he was rated, another higher. Why the discrepancy? In trying to find an answer to such questions, the teacher will come to understand her pupils as she never did before. The accomplishment ratio. In this connection, use should be made of the accomplishment ratio, AR, worked out by Dr. Franzen, see Chapter 4, that is, the ratio secured by dividing accomplishment age by mental age. At present, the value of this device is limited somewhat by the lack of reliable age norms for the various educational tests. When this want has been supplied, it is doubtless will be soon, the AR may become as well known as the IQ. In judging a child's educational performance, we need to know how well he is living up to his mental possibilities. The AR tells us this. It is the main function of the teacher to keep the AR from dropping below 100. That is, to keep the accomplishment level for each child up to the standard for that child's mental age. Where only grade standards are available for an educational test, these may be converted into approximate age standards by use of Table 3, page 13, showing the mental ages which normally correspond to each grade. For example, since the median mental age, also median age corresponding to grade 3 is 9 years, a child who earns a 3rd grade score in a given educational test may be said to have an accomplishment age of 9 years for that school subject. If the child's mental age is 10 years, the AR is 9 divided by 10 or 90. If the score on the educational test is somewhere between the norms for 2 grades, the corresponding accomplishment age is arrived at by interpolation. As Franzen has shown, an ideal method of school marking would be to give the child his AR in each subject. It is obvious that the usual method of marking by A, B, C, D, E, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, does not tell the pupil whether he is doing as well as he could be expected to do, ability considered. Using test results. The purpose of intelligence tests in the school is to make a difference in the educational treatment of pupils, not to furnish amusement to the teacher or to gratify an idle curiosity. Unless the results are to be used, the tests had better not be given. On the other hand, immediate wholesale regrading is not always advisable. Reorganization should take place gradually. The opposition sometimes encountered here and there in putting over a testing program in a city usually melts away under the favorable influence of a successful experiment with the tests in one or two schools. The specific uses which may be made of mental test results are set forth in chapters 2 to 6. The present writer would urge the widespread trial of the multiple track plan, adapted according to size of city and according to other circumstances. Merely to give a small proportion of children an extra promotion, while this is well worth while, is to be satisfied with too little. More radical measures must be adopted to reduce sufficiently the mental age range in the instruction groups. Pupil Guidance. The use of the tests in educational and vocational guidance is hardly less important than their use in regrouping. In fact, the two uses are bound up together. At present, vocational guidance is too largely an end process, an afterthought. To be of most value, it should be preceded by years of educational guidance. At every step of the child's progress, the school should take account of his vocational possibilities. Preliminary investigations indicate that an IQ below 70 rarely permits anything better than unskilled labor, that the range from 70 to 80 is preeminently that of semi-skilled labor, from 80 to 100 that of the skilled or ordinary clerical labor, from 100 to 110 or 115 that of the semi-professional pursuits, and that above all these are the grades of intelligence which permit one to enter the professions or the larger fields of business. Intelligence tests can tell us whether a child's native brightness corresponds more nearly to the median of 1. The professional classes, 2. Those in the semi-professional pursuits, 3. Ordinary skilled workers, 4. Semi-skilled workers, or 5. Unskilled laborers. This information will be of great value in planning the education of a particular child and also in planning the differentiated curriculum here recommended. It will be understood that such figures can only be used as a rough guide, especially since the IQ is not a perfectly accurate measure of intelligence. The discovery and cultivation of talent. The average school devotes more time and effort to its dullards than to its children of superior ability. The latter are expected to take care of themselves. As a matter of fact, many of them are not discovered. Yet it may be of greater value to society to discover a single gifted child and aid in his proper development than to train 1,000 dullards to the limit of their educability, or to prevent the birth of 1,000 feeble-minded. Investigations show that the brightest children, those who have IQs above 130 or 140, are usually located from 1 to 3 grades below that which corresponds to their mental age. They are not encouraged to live up to their possibilities. Their schoolwork is so easy for them that their wills are in danger of becoming flabby from lack of exertion. How can character develop normally in a child who, during all the years when character is being moulded, never meets a task that calls forth his best effort? The school's first task is to find its gifted children and to set them tasks more commensurate with their ability. In 1921, a survey of gifted children in California was begun under the auspices of Stanford University. It is the purpose of the research, which was financed by a substantial grant from the Commonwealth Fund of New York City, to locate 1,000 of the brightest children in the public schools of the state, to secure a large amount of psychological, educational, and physical data concerning them, and to follow their careers as far into adult life as possible. This is the first research of its kind ever undertaken, but there is reason to hope that such studies will become less rare. End of Chapter 1 of Intelligence Tests and School Reorganization. Chapter 2 of Intelligence Tests and School Reorganization, edited by Terman. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Leon Harvey. Chapter 2. Classification of School Children According to Mental Ability. Virgil E. Dixon, Director of Bureau of Research and Guidance, Oakland, California. Editor's Introduction. Dr. Dixon wishes it to be understood that the experiment described in this chapter is tentative and incomplete. It has attracted such wide attention, however, that we are glad to be able to offer this brief account of its main features. The editor, for one, believes that the best hope for a satisfactory solution of the problem of individual differences lies in an extension and thorough working out of the Oakland plan. This belief may or may not be correct, but probably all will agree that the plan should be given such trial as would determine once for all its advantages and limitations. Lewis Madison Terman. Classification in the first 8 grades. The theory behind annual and semi-annual promotions is that pupils can be classified by grades into homogeneous groups, and that, when thus grouped, large classes can be handled by one teacher. It is of course recognized that pupils of similar ability work better together, and that the larger the classes which can be handled, the lower the cost of education will be. However, numerous school surveys of recent years involving the collection of extensive data on age, grade status, classroom accomplishment, and mental condition of children reveal the fact that the average school class of a given grade is far from being homogeneous. That on the contrary, it contains pupils differing so widely in age, accomplishment, and mental capacity that our scheme of graduation and promotion is clearly in need of revision and improvement. With this need before us, we have set about to discover means of improvement. The first question confronting us is, what individual differences among children produce the greatest difficulties in classroom management and instruction? In one term, there were 1,776 failures reported in the various elementary grades of the Oakland schools. The teachers were asked to tabulate the causes of failure under the following headings: 1. Irregular attendance. 2. Ill health. 3. Mental condition. 4. Disciplinary causes. 5. Environmental causes. 6. Administrative causes. A summary of this report of the teachers shows that low mentality, irregular attendance, and poor health, in the order mentioned, are believed to be the leading causes of failure. Of the failures, 48% were attributed to low mentality, 28% to irregular attendance, 11% to poor health. These 3 causes are closely related. Irregular attendance is often due to low mentality. Also, poor health and low mentality are frequent partners in causing school trouble. In any event, there is general agreement among teachers that the difference in mental level is the chief cause of trouble in the average classroom. More than 50% of the failure is attributed to the fact that the child is asked to do work beyond his capacity. Mental tests given to nearly 30,000 children in Oakland prove conclusively that the proportion of failures due chiefly to mental inferiority is nearly 90% than 50%. We have, therefore, adopted the policy that the mental level of the child shall be taken as a point of departure in studying the cause, to determine, upon a proper classification, classroom accomplishment, age, interest, industry, health, and other factors are, of course, taken into consideration. But we have also learned that accomplishment, interest, and industry have a direct relationship to proper placement by mental level. It has been the invariable testimony of teachers in charge of special limited classes where pupils of similar mental ability are grouped together, that these pupils behave better, work better, and accomplish more than they did under the former classification with the regular grade pupils. Our scheme of reorganization is based primarily upon a 3-track plan adapted to the needs of accelerated, normal, and limited classes, respectively. This conception of organization prevails throughout the entire city. However, not all schools have all 3 types of classes organized. In one school, more than 50% of the pupils belong to limited classes, while only an occasional pupil is found for the accelerated division. In another school, nearly 50% are in accelerated classes and only about 3% are reported for the limited classes. Formerly, each school had a tendency to classify pupils according to the standard of capacity prevailing in that district. Now the classification is based upon the standards for the entire city. A 3rd grade limited class pupil, no matter from what school, is clearly classified below normal. There may be 3 times as large a proportion of his kind in one school as in another school. The Oakland Reorganization began in 1918 and the Berkeley Reorganization in 1920. In both cities, progress toward the above goal has been gradual rather than revolutionary in nature. There has been no attempt to force upon all schools a cut-and-dried system, but school after school has dropped into the general plan as the most natural way of working. Various departures are allowed in order to meet the exigencies of different situations. No rule can regulate the classification of a school according to the capacity of pupils to learn. No two schools can be treated exactly alike. The machinery must be subject to constant adjustment. A rule might be stated: find the mental ability of the pupil and place him where he belongs, taking careful consideration of his age, former accomplishment in school, health, and any other condition which is known to have a bearing upon his proper placement. To attempt to define what shall be done as a tendency to make for mechanical treatment of children, while what must be kept uppermost is that the individual needs of each child should be met as nearly as possible. The school must come more and more to consider individuals rather than masses or groups. However, for the sake of having a common language by which we may make ourselves understood, administratively we have attempted to define 5 general types of classes: accelerated, normal, opportunity, limited, atypical. All of these except the normal classes are termed special classes. The special classes differ from the regular classes in that they are permitted to vary the content of the course of study or the rate of progress of pupils, or both. Special accelerated classes are for those pupils who have superior mental capacity. Any group of children moved on together from one class towards a higher group at a rate more rapid than normal is classified under this head. Special opportunity classes are for those children who have good mental capacity, but because of illness, moving about, or other reason are working in grades below where they should be. The purpose of these classes is to give such help as is needed to enable the pupil quickly to take up work with a regular class which fits his capacity and needs. Special limited classes are for children who are so slow or dull mentally that they cannot keep pace with regular class work. The purpose of such classes is to accommodate the overage, slow pupil, modifying the content of the course of study and the rate of progress, so that such pupils may pass up through the grades, getting the most essential parts of the work of each grade and passing on for some training in the upper grammar grades or junior high school before the compulsory age limit is reached. Most of these pupils, if held to a rigid standard of regular grades, would reach the compulsory age limit and pass out into industrial life long before finishing the elementary grades. The maximum enrollment is ordinarily 25 to 30 pupils, as compared with 40 to 50 for the normal classes. Special atypical classes are for children who are found by actual trial and schoolwork and by mental test to show such mental retardation that they cannot make satisfactory progress in a regular class to a reasonable expenditure of time and effort. The pupils in such classes usually have a mental retardation of 3 years or more. These classes are limited to an enrollment of 16 pupils. The course of study varies widely from that of the regular classes, manual work being strongly emphasized. It should be noted that the opportunity and atypical classes are in a sense subsidiary, both belonging to a limited group. The principal of each school, with the assistance of the Bureau of Research and Guidance, organizes the classes in his school so that each child may be placed where he can do best, considering the working conditions of that school, such as the number of teachers, the number of rooms available, and the number of pupils of a given classification. Following is the working organization of one of our large schools. The Lincoln School is an elementary school of 8 grades located in the heart of the city. It has 30 teachers and 1,044 pupils of widely varying social classes, drawn from an elite fashionable district, from the waterfront, and from an oriental section. The school has 7 special limited classes and 1 opportunity class. The remaining 22 classes are termed normal. A few of the lowest atypical children are sent to a neighboring school which has an atypical class. Superior children are cared for by special promotion and by means of the special opportunity class. In addition, most of the teachers have still further classification within their rooms by making 2 or more divisions according to mental capacity. Figure 1 shows clearly the general organization of the school, 7th and 8th departmental classes omitted. 2 of the 7 limited classes of this school are first grade classes. Figure 1 is displayed on the preceding page. Lincoln School, Oakland, showing interquartile range and median age, mental age, and IQ of each grade, 7th and 8th departmental classes omitted. Basis September 1. One of these is composed of pupils who are mentally very low and who are therefore physically and socially decided misfits in the regular first grade. This lowest class has a median chronological age of 7.3, a median mental age of 5.10, and median IQ of 78. Of the class, 25% were above 8.6 chronologically at the beginning of the term, 2.5 years over age, yet were unable, even after repetition, to do the work of the regular first grade. The other limited first grade is composed of those closest to normal age, but who are backward to the extent that they cannot keep pace with the regular class and would become repeaters. In limited class, they are given as much work as they can do each term, but they do not fail and repeat. A similar combination of classes is shown in the limited 6th grade and in the limited 6th and 7th. All the pupils of the latter class really belong in a limited junior high school class and would be placed there if any school had room to receive them. The median chronological age of this limited 7th grade class is 15.0, the median mental age 11.2, and the median IQ 72. These pupils would have to be placed in 4th, 5th, or 6th grades in order to accomplish even fair results in regular class work. Special limited classes are planned for pupils from the first grade right through their school course. They pass from the limited first to the limited second to the limited third, etc., from year to year, progressing steadily, although usually 1 or more years over age. They are allowed to go on not because they have covered standard first, second, and third grade work, but because we believe it is better for them to make steady progress, getting as much of the work as they can as they go, and finally reaching some of the features of upper grade work which are most essential in preparing this type of pupil for industrial life and for citizenship. A survey of conditions in Oakland has shown us that very few of our limited class type of pupils ever are able to finish the 7th grade work of the standard curriculum. In the vast majority of the cases, these pupils leave school as soon as the compulsory age limit of 16 years is reached. Our problem is to give them the best education which the schools can give up to the age of 16. In this particular school, the regular 7th and 8th grade work is departmental, and there is opportunity for the slower pupils to be taken care of in a coaching or opportunity class. This does not meet the problem satisfactorily, but is the best that can be done under present circumstances. Oakland will soon have a complete organization of junior high schools which will permit these limited class pupils who pass beyond the 6th grade to be taken care of in special classes according to a plan described in a latter paragraph. This limited class program shows the attention that is being paid in general to the pupils who are misfits because they are below normal in mental capacity. The very fact that such pupils are segregated into special classes and divisions makes possible a much better treatment of the normal and superior pupils in the regular classes, as it relieves many difficulties of the kind which always arise from an attempt to keep the slower group up to the normal pace. However, the school would not do its duty unless it gave some real attention to those pupils with capacity to do more than is required of them in the grade in which they are working. We locate such pupils by means of standardized tests of mental ability, and having found them, we try to see that they work up to the level of their ability. In the Lincoln School, such pupils are cared for by special promotion and by special coaching, either as individuals or through the opportunity class. There are at the present time 181 children enrolled in this school who have received 1 or more special promotions during the last 3 school years. As the population of this school is exceptionally transient, we estimate that this figure represents not more than half of the special promotions which have been made during the past 3 years. In a follow-up study which was recently made of 123 of the special promotion pupils, it was found that 96 had gained 1 half year, 23 a full year, and 4 a year and a half. All these last 4 have continued in their advanced position with scholarship marks unusually high. One of those allowed to gain a year and a half in 3 years was a child with an IQ of 106, who had entered the receiving class at the age of 7 years and 4 months. The fact that this child was given 3 extra promotions by the time she had finished the 4th grade illustrates how, in this school, a child with good ability who enters late is given opportunity to make up the time which was lost by late entrance. Another typical case is a child with an IQ of 130 who entered the receiving class at the age of 5 years and 10 months. Her superior ability was recognized and she received 3 special promotions by the time she reached the middle of the 3rd grade. As is usual in such cases, she is continuing as a leader of her class, although chronologically she is a year and a half below the average for her class. It is significant that of the 123 special promotion cases in this school, only 2 have failed to make good marks and to maintain regular progress since receiving the special promotion. These 2 were overage pupils with IQs 93 and 85, respectively, who had been working in special limited classes but showed such ability that they were tried out in the regular classes. They did fairly well, but could not quite keep the pace with the regular classes and have had to drop behind 1 term. Many other pupils, however, who came from the limited classes into the regular classes make good. In the main, there are 2 types of pupils who receive extra promotions. 1. Those of superior intelligence. 2. Those who enter school late or who, through sickness or moving about, have dropped behind grade notwithstanding their normal intelligence. In the Lincoln School, approximately 82% of the special promotions are made because of superior intelligence and 18% for reasons of late entrance, illness, etc. Special care is taken to avoid unjust grading of children who have transferred from other school systems. All such pupils are given a mental test, and those of superior intelligence are given special attention which will enable them to advance rapidly to the grade where they really belong. This plan of classification of pupils according to brightness has been in operation in the Lincoln School for 3 years. In that time it has unquestionably brought about a much better professional spirit among the teachers by increasing their enthusiasm and interest in the work and by adding to their knowledge of the individual child. It has also noticeably decreased the problems of discipline among pupils and has brought about a more delightful school atmosphere, both among teachers and among pupils. The organization of this one school has been described in some detail not because it is considered ideal, but in order to give a fairly concrete idea of how the problem of individual differences has been dealt with in one typical school. In some of our other schools, the situation is in certain respects different. For example, if space permitted, it would be interesting to describe the organization in the Prescott School, which is a waterfront school having the most serious overage problem of all the schools in Oakland. This school has 25 normal classes enrolling 965 pupils and 10 special limited classes with an enrollment of 232. That is, the limited class enrollment is approximately a fourth as large as that of the normal classes. Contrasting with this is the Claremont School, which is located in an excellent residence district. In this school there are, in addition to 573 pupils in 17 normal classes, 8 accelerated classes enrolling 400 pupils, but only 2 limited classes with a total enrollment of 46 pupils. There is also an opportunity class of 29 pupils. A large proportion of the children in this school saved from 1/2 year to 2 years in the elementary course. The Lincoln, the Prescott, and the Claremont schools are typical of others in various parts of the city. The total enrollment of the elementary schools of Oakland at present is 26,647. There are 18 special atypical classes with an enrollment of 288, 1.0%. 57 special limited classes with an enrollment of approximately 1,555, 5.8%. And 16 opportunity classes with an enrollment of 303, 1.1%. The special accelerated pupils number 2,583, or approximately 10%. These represent only the authorized segregations. Many classes not formally authorized are working according to the general scheme here proposed. Many others would be organized if it were administratively possible. Here the chief difficulty is that of finding sufficient rooms and furnishing a few additional teachers. The special accelerated classes for superior children are less definitely organized than other classes. Many such classes or groups are to be found in the city, but a consistent effort is being made to keep them from coming into any special prominence. 2 plans are being tried out. 1. An enriched course of study with practically normal pace. 2. Increased speed with less enrichment of curriculum. By one or the other of these plans, approximately 10% of the pupils below the high school in Oakland are receiving some special opportunity due to recognized mental superiority. About 75% of the superior children are making rapid progress, and about 25% are given an enriched program. Many of these pupils are receiving their extra attention as individuals or in small groups through special promotion or through the special coaching that is provided in opportunity classes. Although the above figures show that we are not forgetting the superior child in the classification program which we have set before us, our work thus far is only tentative, and we hope soon to be able to make much improvement in the manner of handling these accelerated pupils and to make special provision for a large number. Special classification in junior high schools. As the classification in the elementary school develops into greater perfection, a large number of overage pupils with comparatively low mental ability are thrown into the junior high school. This makes it imperative that some scheme of special classification be carried on through the junior high school. Following is an illustration of one of our best classifications in a junior high school, the Edison School, Berkeley. Figure 2 shows the median score, Army Alpha Group mental test for each of the classes of the Edison School. This school accommodates pupils in grades 7, 8, and 9. In the low 7th grade, there are 4 divisions, L7-1, L7-2, L7-3, L7-4, 4 being the lowest division and 1 being the highest division. The 3rd and 4th divisions of the L7 grade are special classes and represent very weak students from the academic point of view. If held to rigid standards of work, some of these pupils would still be classed with 4th, 5th, or 6th grades. All of them, however, are overage even for the L7 grade in which they have been placed. They have been promoted into the junior high school because they were past the age of 13 chronologically and had also reached the place where there seemed little if any chance to profit by remaining in the elementary grades. Socially, they belong with the junior high school group, and both socially and intellectually they are misfits in the elementary groups. These pupils are carefully studied with reference to any special abilities or aptitudes which they have. Whenever it is possible for an individual to show accomplishment that is satisfactory, he is placed in a regular class in any one or more subjects as his accomplishment indicates. He is given special class development for the rest of his work. The H7 grade has 4 divisions, see Figure 2. The 4th division, containing 16 pupils, is very inferior, atypical. The 3rd, containing 27 pupils, is inferior. Special limited type, the 2nd, containing 29 pupils, is normal, and the 1st, with 32 pupils, is superior. The L8 grade has 3 divisions. The 2nd and 3rd divisions are very inferior, while the 1st division is average. For some reason, unexplained at present, the L8 grade class as a whole seems very inferior compared with the H7 grade class as a whole. In the H8 grade, there are 3 divisions, the 3rd being very inferior, while the other 2 rank normal or above. In the L9 and H9 grades, there are but 2 classifications, the 2nd representing those below normal, the 1st those normal to superior. This figure clearly illustrates a fact, well known to all observers, that the pupils of inferior intelligence and those who have difficulty with their academic work in the school are the ones who drop out. While the 7th grade has need for 4 divisions, the 8th grade has but 3, and the 9th grade but 2. Most of the 3rd and 4th division pupils of the L7 grade drop out of school before they reach the 9th grade, but according to former practices in our schools, most of those classified in the 3rd and 4th divisions in the 7th grade would never have reached the 7th grade at all. The tendency to hold those who formerly dropped out is indicated by the fact that the classification for this school, which has already been made out for next term, involves adding 1 more division to each of the grades, a 5th division for grade 7, a 4th for grade 8, and a 3rd for grade 9. The pupils of these limited classes are better prospects for good citizenship because of the year or 2 of experience with junior high school pupils of their own age, with instruction aimed definitely towards civic and social relationships required of useful members of society. Figure 2 is displayed on the preceding page. Edison School, Junior High, Army Alpha Group Test. The class medians are also tabulated.
The first special class for this junior high school was composed of 13 overage boys and girls who had low mental test ratings and who were judged by the teacher and principal as unable to profit by further experience in the elementary school. They were taken from grades 3, 4, 5, and 6. The next term came another special class selected from 4th, 5th, and 6th grades. For 5 succeeding terms, this junior high school has conducted limited classes for overage dull pupils who formerly were required to work in grades 3 to 6. If space permitted, it would be interesting to tell how well most of these pupils did compared with their former records.
There is unanimous agreement in our executive and teaching staff to continue and to enlarge this work.
The above description reveals the nature of the pupils who are classified in these special limited classes in the junior high school. The course of study for these pupils varies according to the needs of each particular class. As a matter of fact, the classes are kept very small, and the needs of each individual are studied carefully and are met as nearly as it is possible for the school to meet them. The first problem is to appeal to the interests of the pupil and to his sense of social justice as a citizen of the school and then as a citizen of the community. Opportunities are offered for exposure to manual training, sheet metal work, printing, electrical work, agricultural work, and general science or other vocational or semi-vocational subjects. Sewing, cooking, and homemaking are strongly emphasized for the girls. Music, including singing, band, and orchestra, have been wonderful as a means of getting a hold on some of these pupils. Each child is urged to develop strongly that work in which he shows good efficiency, and through that field his interests are led to other lines of work which his counselor feels he can and should do. Just as in the elementary school, so in the junior high school, the removal of special limited class pupils from the regular classes relieves both the teacher and the class of a great weight. These regular classes are able to do far better work than was formerly possible with the mixed groups. All groups are stirred to better activity by more natural and normal competition. The groups representing superior intelligence over an enriched program in each subject and many pupils are permitted to carry one or more extra subjects, thus decreasing the time necessary to finish the junior high school course. A few experiments have been carried on in which a superior class has singled out a particular subject, English for example, and has covered an entire year's work in a half year. It is yet undecided whether, as a policy, it is better to have an enriched program and a larger number of subjects, or an enriched program and more rapid speed. In any event, there is general agreement that the accelerated pupils shall have an enriched program.
The senior high school. The policy of segregation does not stop with the elementary school and the junior high school. The very fact that we are carrying many of these special limited class pupils up through the grades means that the senior high school is now receiving a large number of regular day pupils that formerly left school for one cause or another before reaching the high school. These pupils are clearly not capable of carrying the standard course as laid down in our regularly accredited high schools. The senior high school must, therefore, face the problem of furnishing courses of study adapted to the needs of these children and making proper classification for them, or must give them a trial at work, which they cannot do, fail them, and pass them out. As a matter of fact, our senior high schools are rapidly adjusting themselves to this new problem, are making classifications according to brightness, and are varying the courses of study as well as offering a large number of electives. The plan of electives, however, has very limited real bearing upon our problem. It is just as absurd to classify dull pupils and bright pupils together in shop mathematics as in algebra, in commercial English as in Latin. The high school must classify according to brightness and must offer modified courses of study, or the present standards for academic work will fall. In such subjects as English, general science, and mathematics, where several classes are scheduled, some of our high schools have arranged for 3 divisions, the first division for superior pupils and the third for inferior. The first division pupils are sometimes given an enriched program and sometimes more rapid promotion, while the third division classes are given a modified course of study. Also, superior pupils as individuals are permitted to carry a larger number of units of work, thus enabling them to shorten the period required for high school graduation. This extra unit plan also fails to offer much aid in the solution of our problem. It merely helps to keep some of the brighter pupils more fully occupied. We are now placing
on our high schools a new responsibility, that of educating a large number of pupils who are of high school age but are admittedly unable to cope with the requirements of the standard high school curriculum. Summary. The graded system with annual and semi-annual promotions has failed to produce homogeneous groupings in our public schools. The misfits at present grade grouping are due largely to improper classification by mental level and uniform requirements in course of study. Each school tends to a classification according to the brightness of pupils of that neighborhood. A standard classification is needed for administrative purposes. The needs of all classes of pupils can be more fully met at little, if any, additional expense by a multiple track system adapted to pupils of superior, normal, or inferior intelligence. This system involves differences in rate of progress through the grades and differences in content of course of study. The system is more democratic than former systems because it offers to every child a freer opportunity to use his full capacity. Limited classes keep dull pupils longer in school by giving work better suited to their needs. Experiments carried on in elementary, junior high, and senior high schools by classifying pupils according to brightness have demonstrated the feasibility of the plan. Modifications have been worked out for the course of study, adapting them to a 3-track plan, and the operating of the system of classification is being continued and enlarged in the Oakland and Berkeley public schools. End of Chapter 2 of Intelligence Tests and School Reorganization by Virgil E. Dixon. Edited by Louis Terman. Read by Leon Harvey.